Let's go! 2019, that's kind of the buzzword, right? Going back in time to when LSU fielded the greatest team of all time. And you've heard this nonstop with Ed Orgeron. He's trying to recreate that magic, bringing in Jake Peetz under the guidance of Joe Brady. But can it be done again? I want to dive deep into this very thing. Let's look at two different metrics and compare it to where LSU was in 2019 in the preseason. So, before we look at these two statistics, sometimes schedules are just so tough to overcome. And if you're comparing the 2019 schedule to the 2021 schedule of LSU, well, there is no comparison. But first, let's take a look at the buzzword. I know the buzzword for LSU is 2019, but the buzzword in all of sports right now is this word called analytics. So the first stat we will look at here today is FPI. It's the ESPN Football Power Index. Now, the word analytics is used a lot. So let's just call this advanced statistics, just so I don't get the analytical community after me, because, as far as diction, people can get, wound up over just terms. So whatever you want to call it, advanced statistic analytic, this is the 2021 ranking based on FPI. And what you'll see here is LSU, according to ESPN's Football Power Index, is 18th in all of college football. Now, does that mean LSU is the 18th best in the country? Is this final ranking an actual definitive thing? And the answer to that is obviously no. It's, this is just their way of determining team strength. However, Alabama lost as much as they did. They're still, FPI is at 28, and they're still ranked number 1. But remember, it's not so much just about LSU. It's about who else is on your schedule. And you'll see here, Texas A&M is on your schedule. FPI 6. Georgia, if you get to the SEC championship game, is at 7. But let's just focus on the permanent opponents. And you'll see Florida at 14th. Auburn, who I think is trending in the wrong direction, still, though, an FPI of 16. Then you go down to Ole Miss at 22. And then right outside the top 25, you have Arkansas, who does return a lot of talent. But you notice what happened, right? Did you catch? I wanted to see if you caught this. Mississippi State is also right here at number 8. And I skipped over that at first because it's unusual for us to see a school like Mississippi State right there. So LSU LSU has 1, 2, 3 FPI top 10 teams in their own division, and that doesn't include cross-division rival Florida at 14, and then, of course, another SEC West team at 16. When we go to the 2019 preseason FPI, take a look at this. LSU was 4th. So, yes, LSU had a magical national championship run, but according to FPI, LSU was one of the 4 best teams in America, or a proverbial preseason college football playoff team. So that is just wild that the FPI was high there. LSU had 4, but now with all the returning talent that they have, they are 18th. Now, let's take a look at where LSU was in the preseason in 2020. The Football Power Index at LSU as the number 12 team. So, as you can see, this statistic can be very inaccurate. Another good example was Penn State. They were awful last season. Wisconsin, same thing. And I know it was weird. They only played 6 games, pandemic, whatever. But still, this is not a death sentence that LSU is number 18 in the FPI. But actually, let's dive a little deeper. Let's stick with ESPN and go to our good old friend, Bill Connolly. So Bill Connolly used to be with SB Nation. Now he's with ESPN. What's very fascinating is Bill Connolly is a sharp. He really knows college football, and he created an analytic or a stat, whatever you want to call it, called SP+. And what SP Plus basically is returning production, recent recruiting, and recent history. Now we go down to the SP Plus rankings for 2021, and you'll see here LSU is actually number 26 in preseason SP Plus, and you see Ole Miss. You even see UL ahead of LSU in that department. But then you also have Texas A&M, Florida, so that makes it 3 teams on your schedule. Then Alabama, 4, and then you get down to Georgia potentially on your schedule. So you have a few really strong SP Plus teams on your schedule, 4. But that also does not include Ole Miss at 24, which is, 5. So that is a pretty high number, 4 or 5. My mind's jumbled. And then you have Auburn right here. And, this list goes on. Arkansas, who's going to be decent this year, at 41. Okay? Now, let's take a look at LSU's SP Plus before the 2019 season. And as you see right here, LSU was 4th, just like FPI, but just a little bit different. So that is pretty freaking wild, okay? So LSU in 2019 had a pretty high preseason ranking according to FPI and SP Plus, and they didn't have a high ranking in those same statistics going into this next season. Keep this in mind. Look at 2020. LSU's FPI, of course, was 12th, and then their preseason SP Plus was 6th before 2020. So it's wild because, I've shared this before and I'll share it again. These stats aren't the be-all, end-all. But I want to dive a little deeper. So, yes, the analytics do not help LSU. But at the end of the video, I'm actually going to give you a stat that actually has LSU number 1. But remember, earlier in the video, we talked about schedule. Schedule means so much. Well, let's actually break down the schedule and compare it to 2019. So let's take a look at the 2019 schedule and compare it to 2021. And I've mashed the two schedules together from fbschedules.com. So the first thing you'll notice is in 2019, LSU, who went 15-0, was a beneficiary of 2 bye weeks. Now, everyone had 2 bye weeks. It wasn't some significant advantage, but still. Whereas in 2021, you only have 1 bye week. I believe it makes it harder to go undefeated when you only have 1 bye week, to rest up and all that stuff. Now, you look at the 2019 schedule for LSU and the 2021 schedule. Both had tricky non-conference road games. Texas was a tricky game, and UCLA, of course, is not going to be easy as well. Both also have 3 non-conference, non-Power 5s that they will play in Tiger Stadium. I would say they're probably about even in difficulty. But what I want you to keep in mind is that the 2021 schedule features a stronger Southeastern Conference. And what I mean by that, look at 2019. LSU, their cross-division rival, of course, is Florida, but they drew Vanderbilt out of the SEC East. So out of the 6 other teams that they could have played in the SEC East, they got to play Vanderbilt, which, of course, is a lucky, huge advantage. Also in the SEC West, Ole Miss was still being coached by Matt Luke. They weren't that good. And Arkansas was still being coached by Chad Morris, who I believe is the worst SEC coach of all time. Mississippi State was being coached by Joe Moorhead with the true freshman quarterback. And Texas A&M was not what they are now. Whereas you look in the 2021 schedule, I think Auburn is going to take a step back to where they were in 2019. But it's pretty clear. Kentucky, albeit they're not that good, they are better than Vanderbilt. Then Ole Miss is obviously going to be a lot better with Lane Kiffin, and you got to play Florida and Ole Miss back-to-back. Dan Mullen versus Lane Kiffin is a really difficult back-to-back schedule. Also, Arkansas at the end of the season, Sam Pittman is an actual competent coach, and Arkansas is going to be decent. And then Texas A&M at the end of the season, Jimbo Fisher has that train moving. I don't know how good Texas A&M is going to be, but they're definitely good. They have a really good roster, especially when it comes to the trenches. So, in 2019, LSU played an easier SEC than the 2021 SEC, even though I would like to add Florida and Alabama are both losing a lot of talent. Still, this 2021 schedule is more difficult than the 2019 schedule. Now, the fascinating aspect of it is it didn't matter who LSU played in 2019. They were so much better than everyone. They would have beaten anyone, anytime, any place, anywhere. So we didn't know that at the time, though. We didn't know that that team was going to be as good as it was, and we didn't know that the schedule was not irrelevant, but not as important as it is in a normal season. Now, I like this 2021 roster for LSU. I think it's really good. I think it is good enough to make a push for a 10, 11, or potentially a college football playoff type of season. But I think we can all agree that this roster in 2021 is not as good as the 2019 roster. So you have a more difficult schedule and a roster that doesn't have the same amount of raw talent. Now, that doesn't mean LSU doesn't have talent. It's just they don't have as much talent as the greatest team of all time, which, of course, if you're the greatest team of all time, I doubt LSU is going to be what they were in 2019. Now, that doesn't mean they can't win it all, but still, it's going to be way harder to survive this schedule, knowing ESPN FPI, knowing S&P Plus, knowing that all the stats and knowing that all these teams are more difficult to play outside of Auburn. Throwing all those different things, it's going to be really tough to recreate the magic of 2019. It's just the truth. So what I want to leave you with, though, is, look, I don't think anyone expected what happened in 2019 to happen. There's not a single one of you that thought we were fielding the greatest team of all time, which is the fun thing about it. Maybe this next year's roster has that ability. Maybe they take that next step. There's obviously a lot of holes. We addressed, to me, the biggest position of need in the transfer portal in yesterday's video. I'll link it down below. But what I want you to do is watch this video right here. It should be flashing up right now. This is actually an analytics stat advanced metric that has LSU ranked number 1. It is Power Hour LSU. Boom! Check that video out. Let me know. I think we're doing pizza tonight. Let's go. Ha ha.